This episode is all about the Mk7 Fiesta. I'm Paul and this is Life on Cars. Here we are today in this Mk7 Fiesta. Now, if you're in the market for a cheap, reliable runaround, a little hatchback, then you can't really go too far wrong with a Mk7 Fiesta. But what I wanted to do today is just talk to you about if you're looking for one of these on a budget and you may be buying a high mileage vehicle, what to look for and what to ask the owner about the maintenance records on the vehicle. Now, this particular one we're in today has just gone over 100,000 miles. It's the Zetec engine. It's the 1300cc Zetec, and they're known to be a very reliable engine. However, at this mileage, you should be asking whether the timing belt has been changed. Ford recommend, I think they recommend 100,000 miles or 10 years, whatever comes sooner. And if it hasn't been done, then it's something that should definitely be budgeted for. Budget for around about £500 to be done in the garage. That would include a water pump as well. It's recommended that the water pump is changed at the same time for peace of mind when you're actually doing the timing belt on the Zetec. So if it hasn't been done, look to get that taken off the asking price. I think the bonnet pulls down there. There we are. Let's get the bonnet up. The timing belt is under this cover here, and it's quite a major job to get to. You know, you've got to take engine mountings off, brackets off, and like I say, it's worth replacing the water pump, which is that fella down there, if you're having this done, and a new auxiliary drive belt. On this car, that job is now due because it hasn't been changed. You can tell if it's been changed recently because you probably noticed that the water pump pulley is looking new, whereas you can see on this one we can see some wear from the belt. But other than that, they're a super reliable engine, these. There's not a lot to worry about, as long as they've had regular oil changes, keeping an eye on the coolant, and servicing, air filters, like I say, oil and filter changes, spark plug changes. You know, they're a super reliable engine. So one of the quirky things about the Ford Fiesta Mk7 is when you put the fan on, if you turn this down to the windscreen, it automatically puts the aircon on to help to demist the windows. But the problem with that is if previous owners have not really paid much attention to that, what that means is when the air conditioning fan is on, the radiator fan is running all the time as well. So you might be thinking, why is he mentioning that the aircon defaults to on when you go for the windscreen setting? Well, the reason I'm mentioning that is it's quite a common fault on these Fiestas that the radiator fan burns out because it's on so much. Because basically when the aircon's on, it turns on the radiator fan to draw air across the air conditioning condenser. So that means the radiator fan will wear out a lot faster than it would on a car that doesn't default to the aircon on. And as you can probably imagine, if the radiator fan breaks, then there's a chance that the car will overheat. And that's exactly what happened to this car. When this owner purchased this car, they hadn't had it very long, and they noticed that the temperature the overheating symbol came on the dashboard for the radiator, and it turned out that the radiator fan had failed. It had basically worn itself out, and that was the reason why, was because it defaults to on all the time with the aircon. So there's one to check. Ask the previous owner, has it had a new radiator fan recently? If not, budget for £100–150 to get that changed. Luckily on these Fiestas they do have a temperature gauge. You can see there just underneath the odometer, and you can see the line there, which is the point where you don't want to be going any further. If it starts to go into the hot zone, then we've got problems. So yeah, it's useful that it has a temperature gauge. Not a lot of cars do now, but like I say, these are prone to having radiator fan, electric fan failures, so one to watch out for. So when you lift the bonnet and you look down here, this is the radiator fan here. Just down there, bolted on the front of the radiator, and they're not too bad to change, but like I say, you need to budget for one of these to be replaced if you're buying an older Fiesta. There is a suspension bush at the back of the suspension on these, which is a common fault that leads to a knocking noise on the back of the vehicle as you're driving along. And again, it's worth asking the owner if those have been changed, because it is a common fault on the Ford Fiesta, and I believe on the Ford Focus as well, of this kind of era. So it's worth asking about those suspension bushes that locate the back axle on the vehicle. They don't tend to suffer from corrosion very much, but it's worth having a close look around the car to see if there is any signs of corrosion starting. Let's take a look, because I've found a little bit on this Fiesta. It's just a tiny bit, but what's happening here is we're starting to get a little bit of corrosion where this rear bumper mounts, and it's probably rubbed through the paint a little bit at the back there, and it's just starting. It's happening on the other side as well. Let's have a look. It's actually a little bit worse on this side. So you can see here we've got a little bit of corrosion starting. It's nothing major, it probably just wants rubbing down and a little bit of a touching. It's probably being caused where that bumper is being rubbing against the back wing. So again, just something to watch out for, and helps you negotiate the price to where it needs to be. And while you're looking at the side of the car, it's always good to look and check for any scratches or accident damage. On this car here you can see there is a few scratches, and again, some of those might polish out, but it's worth noting, and it helps you with your price negotiation. Spider's webs. Comes with electric windows, this one. You know, they are actually quite well equipped for what you get here. I mean, this one's got electric mirrors, electric front windows. It's only a 2-door, this one. And it gets a decent stereo system. It's got fuel consumption, trip computer, that sort of thing. This one's had a Parrot Bluetooth system fitted because it doesn't have phone connectivity as standard. But they're a modern looking vehicle. If you consider the age of these now, I mean, this one here is a reasonably early example of a Mark 7. I mean, the Mark 7 was first introduced in 2008. This one I'm in today is a 2013. So, you know, it's 10-year-old, probably a little, 10 years and a bit. And so 100,000 miles is about the sort of mileage that you're going to come across now with a vehicle like this. There's still plenty of life left in it though, you know. It just needs, like I say, probably a little bit of preventative maintenance, maybe a little bit of paint touch up here and there. And if it gets the timing belt done and the suspension bushes, then, you know, there's a lot of life left in this car. Like I say, check that fan motor for the radiator, see if it's had a recent one. But other than that, they're a super reliable car. You know, one thing I've always liked about the Ford Fiesta of this era is the way that they drive. They do drive very smooth, even though it's only a little engine. But, you know, Ford really nailed that Zetec. They're such a smooth engine when they're running right. And they're a very safe car, these as well. Very comfortable for a little run around. When I'm road testing a car, I'm listening for any strange noises, anything out of the ordinary, listening for wheel bearings and things like that. And I'm checking that the car doesn't veer off if I take my hands off the steering wheel. Does it steer straight? Do the brakes feel okay? Does the gear change feel smooth? Is the clutch okay? That's why it's super important to road test a car before you buy one. Obviously get the car fully warmed up as well, make sure it's not going to overheat. One thing I've noticed with this car, when you go over a speed bump, you do get a bit of a squeak from the front suspension. Hear that? Let's try it again. You get like a didn't do it that time. Let's try it over this next one. Just slightly, that little. And I'll tell you what that'll be. That'll be the anti-roll bar bushes on this car. Again, it's a common thing on Ford Fiestas. See if we can get to do it again over this one here. Yeah, it's just I can just hear it like a little squeak. They'll be dry. They're not a lot of money to change those, and if it gets to a point where it's really annoying, then again, you can budget for maybe £40–50 to get them changed. Some of the settings on here to do with the vehicle, such as things like warning chimes, speed, maximum speed setting, and things like that, can only be disabled if you have a Ford admin key. So it's worth checking that you've got all the keys that originally came with the car. So you should have a couple of keys and an admin key, otherwise you won't be able to change some of the settings in the user menu on the dashboard. Worth asking the previous owner about that before you purchase the car. Yeah, so it's a bit of an unusual system that they have with the Ford. So basically, if you program, let's say you only got one or even two keys like this with the car, and you program both of them to limit things like the speed or warning chimes and things like that. Because these are both programmed, you wouldn't be able to undo that unless you had an admin key or a third key. So or if you're buying a car and there's only one key and someone has programmed the settings in here, then that's it, the settings are locked and you won't be able to do anything about it. So yeah, it's worth asking the owner about the keys for Fords of this era, and make sure you get all the keys that are available. It's worth remembering, if you're buying a car in the UK, you can go online onto the DVLA website, pop in the registration number, and you can check the MOT history and see what's been flagged before, what might have been advised, or what might have been replaced before to get the car through an MOT, and it just gives you an idea of how the car's been looked after. So it's worth remembering that when you're buying a used car. Well, the last thing to mention on the Fiesta Mk7, if you're looking to buy, just have a good look at the exhaust system. They are prone to disintegrating, rusting, and then the main thing for the exhaust is the front flexi pipe. I'll put a picture up if you don't know what I mean, but basically where the exhaust comes down from the engine, it's called a mani cat. It's the manifold and cat together, and off the end of there is a flexi pipe. Now if that's split or falling apart, then it's a specialist repair or a brand new manifold, which is very expensive. Most people manage to find a specialist garage that will cut that part out and weld in a new flexible section, but it might cost you £200–300 to get that done. So have a close look at the exhaust system, check it for any rust, and apart from that, doing your main checks, you know, your tyres, having a general look around, check the interior, any rips, any tears in any of the fabric, but you know, apart from that, they are a reasonably reliable vehicle and a good buy, really. And these now, you know, you can pick these up for less than £2,000 here in the UK. So a good little run around, and I hope you got something out of that video. I hope you've learnt something today, and if you have, please give me a like and a subscribe, and there'll be more videos like this and on different vehicles coming very soon. Take care and have a nice weekend.